Alright, so this is the week 3 lecture that was cancelled because of the storm. Basically, we will be going over the 3 papers that you're required to read and know about for the purposes of this course. So there are 3 papers. The first one is Stroop that we talked about in the last lecture that I also uploaded here, and you had a class with Angelina, and so here's just the slide just shows what those papers are, the title of them, and was the original Stroop article that the Stroop effect actually comes from, and how long they are. Heinzmann from 1972, Stroop effect, input or output phenomenon, and then there's this Windes one, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. That is called reaction time for numerical coding and naming of numerals. So it's very similar to what we did, the experiment that you guys did in class. So you are required for this course to engage with these 3 papers in the following ways. You gotta read them, take a Canvas quiz on them to assess comprehension. So the quiz is just the questions to make sure that you understood the papers, which shouldn't be a problem because you can read it. And in addition to that, we are going over all 3 today, and I'll explain all the procedures and findings. And then you will be writing about their theories, methods, and effects in your papers. So when you are writing your paper, these 3 papers will have to be included in your references. So you want to talk about the Stroop paper and what they did and what they found, and the rubric for grading those papers will be really specific, and you can actually use the rubrics as like a checklist to make sure that you have everything that's required in there. So this slide is basically showing everything that we are doing in this course and how it's in a broader, from a broader point of view, and in a professional setting. It's like when you collected data, you learn to follow technical procedures. When you use library resources to find research papers, it's in a broader sense finding reliable, relevant information, and so on. So this slide's just for your information as of what we're doing, how what we're doing can be translated into a professional setting in a broader sense. So we're just starting to go into these 3 papers. Stroop, we talked about in the last class / video, but they study the interference in verbal reactions related to colors. We'll go over it again really quickly. So the theoretical argument or their rationale for their study is that if A is already connected to B, then for A to get to C, it's difficult without the interference of B. So that's an example of interference. And so Stroop compared reading color words written in black ink compared to naming a color, and reading the word was faster than naming a color. They found, so that shows that reading is a more automatic process than color naming. They found that naming in color is slower in the colored words condition compared to the ink square condition. So because there is an interference that occurs when you see the word red printed in blue. So color naming is rectangles faster than reading a word that is written in a different color. And reading colored words is not slower than reading black words. So they found no difference between reading the word red if it's written in black or if it's written in a different color. Because reading is more automatic, so there's no interference here. Implication of their results, so to like generalize them a little bit, would show that reading is done faster than in-color naming, and therefore it's because reading is a more automatic process, and since interference of word meaning on in-color naming causes a slower reaction in colored words, so in-color naming is slower in colored word condition compared to ink square condition, because the colored word has two features that are incongruent, so the incongruent condition is slower. And they also found that reading colored word is not slower than reading black words because there's no interference of ink color on reading process. So reading is such an automatic process that the ink color would not get in the way of reading. So they found no difference there. That was a quick overview of the Stroop paper. Now Heinzmann, they were trying to see if Stroop effect was a result of an error in the input stage or output. Now we will discuss what that means. So their theoretical argument was that the Stroop effect could have two explanations. One is that the word in ink color, when they get into your memory in parallel, cause some kind of competition or interference or cognitive competition, and that results in slower reaction time. Or it can be that color words distract from the ability to encode the ink color. So this argument says that during the input stage or process, or the encoding of the color, the word would get in the way and distract you from the color of the ink. So they're trying to find out which of the two is more likely to be the case. So they tested 4 categories of stimuli, and they had 19 participants. First, they had a congruent condition in which the colored word was printed in the same color as the word said. So blue was printed in blue. So this is a congruent condition because this has two features, the color of it and the word, and they are both the same. So we call this a congruent condition. There was an incongruent condition because the word blue is printed in green, so there will be an interference here between the color green and the word blue. They had the neutral condition, that was a non-color related word printed in just any color, just like bird printed in blue, it doesn't matter. So they read the word. And they also had a control condition that was just a combination of letters that did not form a real word. So they're like random letters in just any color, but it's not a meaningful word. All right, so their results, so what they found was that naming in color is faster in the congruent condition compared to the control condition. So naming the color of the blue ink was faster when the word was blue than when the word was not meaningful. Just a combination of letters. And this phenomenon that is also important for you to know when you're writing your paper is called facilitation. So the meaning of the word is helping or facilitating your cognitive ability to name the color because the word is the name of the color. So the process of facilitation causes the word blue printed in blue ink to be faster than reading nonsense words that are not related to the color. In the other condition, they found that naming in color is slower in the incongruent condition compared to the control condition. So the incongruent condition, let me get this laser pointer. The incongruent condition, the color blue is printed in green. So as you know already, there's an interference. So this is slower than the control condition. The control condition is again just naming the in color of this word. That doesn't make any sense. So people were faster to say this is blue than to say this is green because the word blue gets in the way. So we see an interference here as well. So facilitation up here, interference down here. And they also found that the neural and control condition do not, neutral. So there's a typo here. What does this mean? The neutral and control condition do not differ. So they didn't find a difference between naming the in color of a word that is not color related versus naming in color in a word that's not really a word. So there's no difference. They say this is blue as fast as they say this is blue. So these are the findings of the Heinzen paper simplified. The implications of their results. So what do we, in a more general way, what do we conclude from these findings is that congruent features facilitate response time just like they did for when the word blue was printed in blue, so make people faster. In the incongruent condition, incongruency results in slower response time. So when the word blue is printed in green, it results in slower response time because of interference. And in the third one, they found no difference between neutral and control condition. So naming the ink color in a word that is not color related is just as fast as ink color of random letters that are not meaningful. And then the third paper is Wendes paper called Reaction Time for Numerical Coding and Naming of Numerals. That is very similar to the experiment that we did in class. So we already know that interference and facilitation occur using words and colors. We saw both facilitation and interference in colors and words. Now, what about numbers? So we already have this argument that reading is done faster than in color naming, remember? So reading the word red was faster than saying that this rectangle is red. And we also know that in color naming is slower in colored word condition compared to the ink square condition, right? Because there is an interference up top with the red printed in blue, and there's no interference down here. And then we also know that naming in color is faster in the congruent condition compared to the control condition. So if the word blue is written in blue, it makes people faster because there's facilitation. So we went over this so many times. You want to know when facilitation happens, when interference happens, and about automaticity. What is more automatic than what? So we already know that reading words is more automatic than naming colors. And when it comes to numbers, now we will see that counting is reading numbers is more automatic than counting that you saw in class, and now we're going to go over in this paper. So the question now was, what if we use symbols and numbers as the stimuli? So there was work done on words and colors. So this Wendes guy decided to try numbers. All right, so they had four experimental conditions. The first one was to name the numbers, single-digit numbers, 1, 2, 3. Super easy. Then they needed to name the quantity, so count the plus signs and report how many plus signs there are. Third condition, they name the number that has incongruent group and congruent. So in the incongruent condition, there are like 3 1s or 4 2s. So the number of the digits and the number itself are different, but they're supposed to read the number. So let's say 1, 2, 3. And in the congruent condition, they still needed to name the number, so 1, 2, 3, but the number of digits are the same as the number itself. And the fourth one was they needed to name the quantity, and in this one also they had an incongruent figures condition. So in the incongruent, there are 3 1s, 4 2s, so the correct answer here will be 3, 4, and so on. And in their congruent figures, there is 1 1, 2 2s, 3 3s, and so on. So here they read the number, and here they count the number of digits. So these were the 4 conditions. And they had 36 participants. So the results, they found that naming individual numbers is faster than counting neutral symbols. That's kind of obvious, right? So to read 1, 2, 3 is faster than counting signs. Counting in the congruent and incongruent in general was slower than naming numerals. So counting is always slower than reading. So if they were counting these, regardless of if it was congruent or incongruent, was slower than just reading a single digit number. Naming the numbers in the congruent condition is faster than counting in the congruent condition. So if you're naming these numbers, saying 1, 2, 3 is faster than if you're saying 1, 2, 3 number of digits. And lastly, they found that counting in the congruent is faster than counting in the incongruent. It's very obvious. If they have to count those numbers and the number of digits is the same as the number, then it makes it much faster than if the number of digits is different from the number. That's the same thing as the interference that happens with words and colors. Here there's an interference because you're seeing the number 1, but you have to report 2. And reading the number, because it's faster and more automatic than counting, gets in the way of counting and reporting the number of digits. So the first part of the experiment shows that trending, so their p-value was smaller than 0.05. That just suggests automaticity. That means reading the numbers, single-digit numbers, was significantly faster than counting the plus signs. The second part of the experiment suggests that naming numbers is more automatic than counting, so that's why naming these numbers is faster than counting the number of digits. Although it's congruent, whether congruent or incongruent is slower than naming, and this suggests that naming or reading numbers is a more automatic cognitive process than counting. Their third experiment suggests automaticity of naming again, because naming these numbers was faster than counting the digits. Although the correct answer is the same, but they did this faster if they were told to read the number than to count the number of digits. And the fourth one suggested that there is an interference when in the incongruent condition when there is 2 1s, 3 2s, etc., there is an interference and makes people much slower when counting the incongruent digits versus counting the congruent digits. What they didn't do though, they did not compare these to the neutral plus sign one. So something they could do, or could be done in the future, I don't know if it was to compare these conditions to the neutral where they were counting plus signs to see if counting numbers in the congruent or incongruent condition is slower or faster than just counting plus signs, which was the control condition. So to summarize, Stroop found that reading is done faster than ink color naming. Heinzman found that naming ink color is faster in the congruent condition compared to the control condition because of the interference. And Windes showed that counting in the congruent is faster than counting in the incongruent condition. So that's it for this week. So you need to kind of read these papers, go over these slides, and then you have that quiz due that you take on Canvas under modules before the 9th. I think it has until midnight, before midnight on the 9th, which is next Friday. Email me if you have any questions, and thank you for your time today.